The cafe was buzzing with life, the soft hum of conversations blending with the clinking of coffee cups. One sat across from Chloe, her eyes gleaming with excitement as she stirred her latte absent-mindedly. She couldn't hold back the smile tugging at her lips, her heart feeling light as she spoke about Jungkook. He's just amazing, Chloe. He acts all cold and distant in front of others, but with me, he's different. Protective, intense, and so caring in his own way. Sometimes it feels unreal. Chloe arched a perfectly shaped brow, tilting her head slightly as she sipped her iced coffee. A forced smile played on her lips, but her eyes held a different story, one laced with jealousy, carefully concealed behind feigned interest. Oh, protective, huh? That sounds intense. She let out a soft chuckle, tapping her manicured nails against the glass, her words dripped with curiosity, but there was something else. But wine, are you sure he actually loves you? I mean, men like him, they are complicated. Especially someone like Jungkook, a mafia leader. Wine blinked, catch off guard for a brief second before she let out a small laugh. Chloe, come on. Of course, I'm sure he might not say it outright, but his actions speak louder than words. I see it in the way he holds me, in the way he makes sure I'm safe. Chloe hummed, twirling a strand of her hair between her fingers, her lips pressed into a thin line before she spoke again, her voice laced with a fake concern. But don't you think dating a mafia is risky? I mean, you never know when things could go wrong, when if his enemies come after you. What if one day he changes? Her words lingered in the air, a faint smirk threatening to curl at the corner of her lips. As she observed Wine's reaction, Wine, however, remained unbothered, waving her hand dismissively. I trust him, Chloe. He would never let anything happen to me. And honestly, I don't care about the risks. I love him. She said it so firmly with so much conviction that for a brief moment, Chloe felt a pang of bitterness hit her chest. Well, if you're happy, then I'm happy for you. Her words were sweet, but the tight grip around her coffee cup said otherwise. Wine, oblivious to the jealousy simmering beneath Chloe's smile, continued gushing about Jungkook, completely unaware of the silent war brewing in Chloe's mind. The cafe's warm atmosphere was suddenly disrupted by a shift in energy, an intimidating presence that sent a shiver through the room. The soft chime of the entrance bell barely registered as the conversations around them hushed slightly. An unspoken tension filling the air, Wine's eyes widened when she saw him, Jungkook, dressed in an all black suit. His sharp gaze scanned the cafe like a predator searching for its prey. His cold, unreadable expression only amplified the authority he carried, making heads turn as he strode forward with slow steps. Before Wine could even react, Jungkook was beside her. Without a single word, his fingers wrapped around her wrist firm yet not painful, and in one swift motion he pulled her up from her seat, making her stumble slightly against his chest. Jungkook, her breath hissed as she looked up at him, confusion flickering in her eyes, but Jungkook didn't answer. His jaw clenched, and his attention remained solely on her, as if Chloe wasn't even sitting there. Chloe, however, refused to be ignored. A sweet, practiced smile curved on her lips as she reached out, placing a delicate hand on Jungkook's arm. Jungkook, what a surprise! It's been so long. The moment her fingers touched him, he moved. Without even glancing her way, Jungkook pulled his arm back, effectively shrugging off her touch as if it burned. His gaze remained cold, detached, uninterested. Move. One word, that was all he said. Chloe's smile wavered, her fingers curling into a fist as her cheeks burned with embarrassment. Never had anyone dismissed her so effortlessly. Meanwhile, Wine, completely unaware of Chloe's growing frustration, let out a small giggle, her heart fluttering at Jungkook's possessive behavior. Someone is in a bad mood. Jungkook finally looked down at her, his cold expression softening just a fraction, but only for her. We are leaving. Chloe's nails dug into her palm as she watched Jungkook gently guide Wine toward the exit, his grip on her wrist never loosening. Left behind, Chloe clenched her jaw, her forced smile long gone, her eyes darkened as she watched them leave. Frustration bubbling inside her, Jungkook didn't even spare her a second glance. The next day, the air felt heavier than usual. The sun hung lazily in the sky, casting a golden hue over the college campus. But for Vine, the warmth failed to reach her. She was too lost in thought, her mind replaying Jungkook's cold yet protective demeanor at the cafe the day before. The way he had pulled her close, the way Chloe had reached for him only to be ignored. She didn't think much of it then, but now something felt off just as she turned the corner of an empty hallway. A familiar voice called out, Wine, wait! Startled, Wine stopped in her tracks, only to see Chloe approaching her, her expression unreadable. Something in her eyes, something almost desperate, made Wine shift uncomfortable. Chloe, what's wrong? Chloe inhaled deeply as if preparing herself for something. Then, without warning, she grabbed Wine's hands, squeezing them tightly. Wine, you don't deserve this life. Wine frowned, confused. What are you talking about? Chloe's eyes glistened with something almost pitiful, her tone laced with concern, but underneath it there was something else. You deserve a normal, safe love, someone who can give you a peaceful life, not whatever this is not him. Wine stiffened, she immediately knew who Chloe meant. Jungkook. Chloe exhaled, looking away for a brief moment before nodding. He's dangerous, Wine. You saw how he acted yesterday. So cold, so controlling. Is that the kind of love you want? Someone who can snap any second? Someone whose life is built on crime and blood. A lump formed in Wine's throat, but she forced herself to shake her head. No, Chloe, you don't understand. Jungkook, he. No, Wine, you don't understand. I'm telling you this because I care about you. I don't want to see you get hurt. Her grip on Wine's hands tightened. Her eyes pleading, wide wavered uncertainty creeping into her heart, but nothing could have prepared her for what came next. Chloe took a deep breath, her voice suddenly trembling. I love him. The words seemed to stop. Wine's lips parted, but no words came out. Her chest tightened, the betrayal hitting her like a crashing wave. What? Chloe swallowed hard, her eyes glossy as she were in pain. I can't help how I feel, but if you really love me as your best friend, you will let him go. The weight of her words suffocated Wine. She had trusted Chloe. She had shared every little detail of her love for Jungkook, not once thinking that her best friend. No, this wasn't happening. You want me to leave him because you love him? Chloe let out a shaky sigh, her tone almost desperate. I know it's selfish, but fine. You know, deep down that I'm right. He's not the one for you. If you walk away now, you can still have a normal life. You can still be safe. The words twisted inside Wine's heart, wrapping around her like thorns. Torn between the friend she had trusted all years and the man she had slowly deeply fallen for. She didn't know what to do, and that hesitation was all Chloe needed. In the days that followed, Wine found herself avoiding Jungkook. She ignored his calls, made excuses when he wanted to see her. Every time she thought about him, Chloe's words echoed in her mind. You don't deserve this life. He's dangerous. If you really love me as your best friend, you will let him go. And so, little by little, Wine began pulling away, and with that Jungkook was already noticing. The past 2 days had been hell for Jungkook. At first, he tried to brush it off. Maybe Wine was just tired, maybe she needed space. But now it was obvious she was ignoring him. She didn't pick up his calls, didn't reply to his messages. Even when he came to see her, she found some excuse to leave quickly. Jungkook wasn't stupid. He had seen countless people lie, deceive, and manipulate. But Wine, she wasn't the type, which means someone had gotten into her head. And he had a very good idea of who it was. His patience was razor thin as he sat in his office, his jaw clenched, a glass of whiskey untouched on his desk. His phone sat beside it, the screen lit up with his last unanswered call to Wine. He exhaled sharply, picking up the glass and downing the drink in one go before slamming it down. Enough of this shit. A few minutes later, he was in his car, his grip tightening around the steering wheel as he drove through the city. He knew where Chloe usually hung out. She was predictable, and sure enough, as he turned onto the street near a trendy cafe, he spotted her. There she was, standing outside with her group of friends, a bright smile on her face as she sipped on an iced coffee, laughing like she didn't just turn his life upside down. Jungkook's anger shimmered. He parked the car half bizarrely and got out, his long strides purposeful as he stormed toward her. The moment Chloe's eyes met his, she stilled for a split second before quickly cooling her expression into one of amusement. She tilted her head, watching him approach like she had been expecting this. Her friends noticed the shift in atmosphere, the way Jungkook's presence sucked the warmth out of the air. One by one, they excused themselves and hurried away, sensing danger. Jungkook didn't care. He stopped right in front of Chloe, his dark eyes boring into hers. What the hell did you say to her? Chloe blinked innocently, her lips curving into a slow smirk. Oh, you mean wine? She took a slow sip of her drink before shrugging. I just gave her some advice. Jungkook's expression didn't change, but his body stiffened. Advice? Yes, about how dangerous you are, how she deserves better. She tilted her head, feeling sympathy. She listened, didn't she? Jungkook's finger twitched at his sides, his jaw tightening. Stay the hell out of my business. Instead of looking intimidated, Chloe stepped closer, too close before Joko could move back. She lifted a hand and placed it on his arm, her fingers slightly tracing over the fabric of his sleeve. Why are you wasting your time on her, Jungkook? She leaned in slightly, her voice dropping. We both know she's not made for your work. She's too soft, too delicate. Jungkook's entire body tensed, his expression darkened, eyes burning with rage. But me, she bit her lip, her fingers pressing against his arm. I can give you more than she could ever. A sharp silence followed then. Jungkook roughly shoved her away. Chloe stumbled back, her eyes widening in shock. Her smile was gone, replaced with disbelief. No man had ever rejected her so outright. Jungkook glared down at her, his voice like ice. Touch me again, and I will break your damn hands. Chloe's breath hitched. For the first time, she looked nervous. Jungkook took a slow, threatening step forward, towering over her. Stay away from wine. Chloe swallowed hard, but before she could say another word, Jungkook turned and stormed off. His mind was racing, his fury barely contained. Chloe had poisoned Wine's mind, that much was clear, but now he knew the truth and he was going to fix it. No matter what it took, the night was quiet except for the soft sound of Wine's muffled sobs. She sat on the small bench in the garden behind her house, hugging her knees to her chest. The cold night air brushed against her skin, but the ache in her heart was colder. She had tried to hold it in, tried to act normal, to push down the painful words Chloe had said, but it was impossible. Her best friend, the one person she trusted, the one person she thought would always support her, had asked her to give up Jungkook, and the worst part, a tiny part of her had believed Chloe. Maybe I don't deserve him. Maybe I should let him go. A fresh wave of tears rolled down her cheeks as she buried her face in her arms, her body trembling from the weight of it all. She didn't hear the footsteps approaching, didn't notice the dark figure standing a few feet away, his sharp eyes locked onto her shaking form. Jungkook had been looking for her. He had searched everywhere, his patience running dangerously thin, his anger barely contained, and now seeing her like this, curled up crying, looking so damn fragile, something inside him snapped. Without a word, he strode forward, grabbing her arm and pulling her up. Tell me what's going on. White gasped, startled, and quickly wiped at her face. Jungkook, his grip on her tightened, his dark eyes burning with frustration. Don't act like nothing is wrong. His voice dropped, cold and sharp. You have been avoiding me, ignoring my calls, lying to me. Wine looked away, her heart pounding. Let me go. She tried to pull away, but he didn't budge. Not until you tell me the truth. Her hands pressed against his chest, weakly pushing, but it was useless. He was too strong. Desperate to get away, she turned her face away from him. Jungkook, please. That was it. Jungkook had enough. With a sharp move, he pushed her back until her body hit the cold brick wall behind them, caging her in with his arms. She gasped, eyes widening, but before she could say anything, his lips crashed against hers. The kiss was rough, desperate, frustrated. His fingers stuck into her waist, his body pressing against hers, leaving no space between them. He could feel her trembling, her soft hands gripping onto his shirt like she wanted to push him away but couldn't bring herself to do it. Wine's breath hissed as more tears slipped from her eyes. Mixing into the kiss, Chungo pulled back just enough to look at her face. His breathing heavy, his jaw clenched, her tear-streaked face broke something inside him. Talk to me. One swallowed hard, her lips quivering. For a moment, she struggled, her eyes darting away like she was still trying to hold it in. Then, in a broken whisper, she finally let it out. Chloe, she loves you. Jungkook's entire body went still, his fingers twitched against her waist, but he said nothing, waiting for her to continue. She told me I don't deserve you, that I should let you go, that I should let her have you. The words hung in the air, suffocating. Jungkook's grip on her tightened, his jaw clenched so hard it ached. Slowly, he exhaled, his voice dropping to a dangerous level. You think I would ever want her? Wine flinched at the coldness in his tone. She looked up at him hesitantly, her teary eyes searching his. Jungkook's expression was unreadable, his lips slightly parted as his breathing heavy, his eyes dark with fury. Then his hands moved, one gripped her chin, tilting her face up so she had no choice but to look at him. The other rested against the wall beside her, his body caging her in. I don't give a damn about her. Wine's breath shuddered. You are the only one I see, Wine. Her eyes widened slightly, so don't. He took a deep breath, trying to control the emotions raging inside him. Don't you ever listen to anyone who tells you otherwise. A sob broke past her lips as she clutched his shirt, her body collapsing against his. Jungkook catch her instantly, wrapping his arms around her, holding her close as she cried into his chest. His jaw tightened as his eyes darkened with pure hatred. Chloe, you crossed the line, and he was going to make sure she paid for it. The next day, Chloe sat in her usual spot at the cafe, sipping her overpriced latte with a smart smile. She had done it. Wine was finally starting to pull away from Jungkook. It was only a matter of time before she left him for good, and when what happened, Jungkook would see who truly deserved to be by his side. She flipped her hair, checking her reflection in her phone. Just as she was about to take another sip, the cafe doors burst open with a sharp clang. The air shifted, a chilling presence filled the space, suffocating. Chloe's fingers tightened around her cup as she slowly looked up, only to see him. Dressed in all black, his coat draped over his broad shoulders, his sharp jaw clenched tight, and his dark, deadly eyes locked with her. The cafe buzzed with quiet whispers as people instinctively shrank away from his menacing aura. The usual playful smirk he sometimes wore now here to be seen. He wasn't just angry, he was furious. Chloe's heart pounded in her chest, but she quickly composed herself. Jungkook, what a surprise! Did you come to? Before she could finish, Jungkook pulled out the chair opposite her and sat down, leaning forward with his forearms on the table. His gaze burned into hers. You have 10 seconds to tell me what the hell you were thinking. Chloe's smile quivered. What are you talking about? Jungkook let out a slow, humorless chuckle. Then, faster than she could react, he reached across the table and gripped her wrist, his fingers tightening just enough to make her squirm. I know what you did to Wine. Chloe gasped, quickly looking around. Jungkook, you are making a scene. He yanked her forward slightly, lowering his voice to a deadly whisper. I don't care. His eyes were cold and relenting. You think I wouldn't find out, that I wouldn't notice her avoiding me, that I wouldn't feel something was wrong? Chloe swallowed hard, her fake confidence beginning to crack. I was only looking out for her. Jungkook's grip tightened, slightly making her wince. Looking out for her, his voice darkened. By making her cry, by filling her head with doubts, by making her think I would ever want you. Chloe's face burned with humiliation. Jungkook, I. Shut up. The cafe was silent now. People were staring, but no one dared to interfere. Jungkook's jaw clenched as he released her wrist, wiping his hand on his coat as if touching her disgusted him. He leaned in, his voice dropping even lower. You don't get to manipulate wine. You don't get to decide who she loves, and you sure as hell don't get to touch anything that's mine. Chloe flinched at his words, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. But I love you. Jungkook's expression didn't change. I don't care. His chair scraped against the floor as he stood up, towering over her. You are nothing to me, Chloe, and from now, you are nothing to her either. Her breath hissed, "Stay away from wine. If I ever see you near her again, you will regret it." Without another glance, he turned and walked out of the cafe, his presence leaving a suffocating silence in his wake. Chloe sat frozen, her hands trembling in her lap. For the first time in her life, she had lost, and she had lost wine.